Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Intel with Greg Cosell and Inside the Birds presentation. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan from Inside the Birds. And with us, of course, is Greg Cosell, the main event here in the show. As we will move on, Greg, we move on from free agency to now the NFL draft. And I know you've been grinding tape like nobody else. At your suggestion, we're going to start with wide receivers. It's clearly a group and timely, right? The Eagles, we know from our free agency shows, showed interest in some free agent wide receivers. Some of them were big names as well, but fell short in that category. So as Adam likes to say, the answers to the test are there. We know the Eagles are looking at wide receiver yet again, and so we will go through them with you. I want to start off by asking you, just because I like to throw this question at you. You watch so much tape of so many different guys. Is there one guy in particular, one or two that come to mind that you didn't know much about, but man, the tape just, because every once in a while you have that where the tape just, wow, kind of took you by surprise and really got on your radar. Is anybody that jumped out at you in that regard?
Calvin Austin from Memphis. Didn't know the first thing about him. Other than I heard he had a really good Senior Bowl. Of course, Adam was at the Senior Bowl during the week. I was not, because that's the week we produce our Super Bowl matchup show here at NFL Film. So I've never been able to go to the Senior Bowl. I would say Calvin Austin. And I'm going to throw out a name that many may not have heard of until he ran at the Combine, Taequan Thornton from Baylor. I knew nothing about him. I knew he ran fast. At the Combine. So when I put his tape on, which was after the Combine, by the way, Austin I watched before the Combine. Taequan Thornton from Baylor, knew nothing about in the least, other than pulling up his stats on my computer and seeing he caught 62 balls and looked up his background, saw that he's a track guy, but knew nothing about him. And quite honestly, was very impressed with his tape. And I'm curious to see where he goes, because he's more than a track guy. Where he goes and what his future might be.
I know you're not a GM, so but for the sake of your grading or studying purposes, Austin and Taequan that you mentioned there, Taequan Thornton, do they feel like guys who will be day 2 guys to you, or day 3 with a potential to be better than your average day 3? Where did you feel like they might fall?
Yeah, and that always depends, Geoff, as you know, and Adam and I have had this conversation for years and years. I'm not good with slotting guys, but I could see Austin being a day 2 pick, but because he's under 5'8" and 172 pounds, even though he doesn't look like that on tape nor necessarily play that way, that's still what he is. I could see a team that has a plan for Austin, drafting him day 2 for sure. I think he's more than let's say, remember Tutu Atwell from a year ago? The man took him in the second round, but he weighed 149 pounds. Austin, to me, is not that kind of player. He's far more than that. So I think you can line up and play Austin. Again, I think Austin, in some ways, in the right scheme, could. And I'm going to throw out a name here. And again, this is me just spitballing now. So I don't want people to think I spend weeks thinking about this. This is just you throwing out, what do I think he could be?
Sure.
I think if used properly, where there are other good receivers and a pretty diverse and multiple pass game, is there a Tyreek Hill element to his game? He certainly can run, and he's not a slim guy. Okay. He's not small and tiny. He's short, but he's not small. So I could see that. Thornton, my guess is he's probably going to be a day 3 guy, but I don't know. I can't imagine I'm the only guy that watched his tape and saw something good. Like I said, I'm not saying he's a top 40 pick, but I can't imagine I'm the only guy with all the receivers coaches in the league and all the offensive coaches in the league who looked at his tape and said, oh, there's something there.
Well, shoot, I hope you are, because that would make this show really awesome maybe in 2 or 3 years.
Well, look, you were the guy who told us about Josh Palmer. You're even before I talked to receivers coaches, you're going, hey, this is a guy that I saw run by some really top corners. And you were right. He did great as a rookie.
Hey, and when I was out at the Chargers training camp last year, Tom Telesco made it a point to come out to me, come see me, because I'd never met Tom actually until then. And I guess he heard me talk about him, and he said, you were right on about Josh Palmer. Obviously, they drafted him, so they liked him too. Yeah. But he said, you were right on about Josh Palmer. So he must have heard me talking about him at some point in time. But,
and we'll just pretend that was on Inside the Birds, by the way, even though we know.
Right. Maybe it was, but,
it was.
Receivers are very often a function of how teams see them, because unless you're dealing with transcendent receivers and Jamar Chase is a transcendent receiver. When I watched his tape last summer, even though he didn't play in 2020, I just said, this guy's great. I mean, everybody's going to know that he's transcendent. If you're not dealing with transcendent receivers, by that I mean receivers who have some good traits, but they also have some things that need to be worked on and cleaned up and coached, then they end up being Geoff in the eye of the beholder and how teams see them within their offensive system.
Sure.
And there's a bunch of receivers that I'm sure we're going to talk about shortly that are like that in this particular draft.
I want to stay here with Calvin Austin, because I was able to see him at the Senior Bowl, and it's funny you mentioned his size. He's under 5'8". Usually these guys they're gadget players. He was not used like that, first of all, in Mobile, and then watching him, for some reason they were on CBS Sports Network a lot on Saturday, so I was able to see him quite a bit. I didn't know he was 5'7" and 3/4 or whatever he is. He's under 5'8", because he looked bigger than that.
Yeah.
Very big legs, like pretty thick, as you were talking about, Greg. So where do you see him lining up? Do you think he can line up on the outside? Does he have to line up on the inside? Where do you see him lining up the next level?
Well, he lined up on the outside in college. It's funny you say that, because in my transition, I said Austin may well be the exception as you project and transition him to the next level. I said conventional thinking suggests that a 5'70" and 170-pound receiver does not have a significant role, but Austin may break that paradigm. That's what I thought watching his tape. I think, first of all, he's got sudden explosiveness. He's got pure speed, and he's got real speed, not just track speed. He's got play speed. And the one thing I thought, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, he's the best route runner I ever saw, but I thought that there was some surprising nuance to the details of the position. He was much more than a track athlete playing receiver. He had a plan to defeat press coverage. I thought he understood how to use his vertical stem to attack and challenge corners. And as you mentioned, Adam, he was an outside receiver in college, but I think in the NFL, with the way offenses now are structured, he could be a guy that lines up all over. And you can use him, obviously, as a movement motion guy, a jet sweep guy. You want to get this guy the ball on the move, jet sweeps, tunnel screens. You want to give him an opportunity to build up that speed and velocity, because he can explode.
Greg, let me ask you about, because we spend a good deal of time talking about, including with you, the Eagles having these movable part, twitchy wide receivers, whether it's Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Jalen Reagor, theoretically, hasn't shown it yet, but has those traits. But the sort of the lack of a big body, sort of natural X type wide receiver. There are a few of them I wanted to ask you about to compare and contrast. One being Drake London from USC, and another being Treylon Burks from Arkansas. Now, I shouldn't say that they're just X. I just know that they're bigger bodied wide receivers. I'll let you do the breakdown on them. And anyone else that comes to mind that you think first round or day one or early day two that fits that mold?
Well, I think I'm in the minority when it comes to Drake London. I think, first of all, in college, he played both inside and outside. He played a lot inside in 2020, and then he played far more on the outside in 2021 before he got hurt. And that's a positive. He's a long, athletic, savvy wide receiver. To me, he's a size, length, hands receiver. His movement is smooth and fluid. I think he knows how to position his body to create just enough space to catch the ball. He's got great body control and great hands. And that allowed him in college, Geoff, to be a boundary X and make a lot of catches outside the numbers. Many of them, if not most of them, were tough contested catches versus tight coverage. So that always raises a question. There's always a positive to that, and there's always a potential negative to that. If he's forced to make tough contested catches against Pac-12 corners, what's going to happen in the NFL? I'm not sure. In all honesty, to me, that's a little bit of an open question. Now, you can't discount that ability. That's a very strong trait, the ability to make tough contested catches, and certainly boundary X receivers in the NFL have to be able to do that. But there's no twitch to him at all. There's no suddenness to his movement. He's an upright runner. He's a little tight. There are times watching him, quite honestly, and this is where I'm in the minority, but I'm just telling you what I interpreted from watching his tape. I almost thought he was kind of like a tight end at times, like a long tight end. Obviously doesn't weigh as much as tight ends. I think he's a bit of a one-speed receiver. I don't think he has that second gear on vertical routes. He's not a vertical accelerator. I actually kind of saw him more as ultimately a slot receiver. I've seen a lot of comparisons by people that we all respect to Mike Evans, to Mike Williams. I don't see him that way at all. I think he's Marcus Colston, but that's the way I see Drake London based on my tape study. And by the way,
but
there's nothing wrong with Marcus Colston.
Right, but you do believe London moves better than Colston did?
I think they're somewhat similar.
Okay.
Yeah, Colston, I mean, he's I think the way he moves is smoother, which makes him look better. Yes, that's for sure.
Okay.
Now, I think he knows how to create space. I think he's really good versus zone. I think he knows how to find voids in zone coverage. I'm just curious as to whether he's going to separate. And again, separation is a relative term, particularly for taller receivers. So, I could well be wrong about Drake London, but there's no juice to Drake London.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. So I and maybe he doesn't need the kind of juice that you need if you're 5'11", 195 pounds. He probably doesn't. But there really is no suddenness at all to his movement.
So it's hard not to hear you describe. I'm not making an apples to apples on the player before, I don't want anybody to think I'm doing it or you just did it. But what you said and the concerns sort of sound a little, from an Eagle standpoint, like Arcega-Whiteside-ish.
I knew you were going to mention that.
Yeah, kind of a career at Stanford, same conference, of doing some of the things you said, but could not win on the outside and has basically played sort of like a flex tight end blocking receiver role for the Eagles. And also the name Jordan Matthews popped into my head as like a big non-twitchy slot. But I don't know if you
and I think London is a smoother athlete than Arcega-Whiteside. So
okay, for
sure. But again, like I said, I could well be wrong. And you know what? If I prove to be wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. I'm just telling you what I see in the tape. I just don't think there's a lot of juice to him. And I don't know if you can make a living in the NFL just making tough contested catches outside the numbers.
True.
There's a place for him in the NFL people that listen to this, I don't want people to think I'm saying he's a bust and he can't play. That's not my point. But, people that we all respect and mock drafts that guys do by people we all respect have him as a top 10 pick. I do not see him that way. Maybe I'll be wrong, but to me, he's not Mike Evans at all or Mike Williams at all. I don't see that comparison for half a second. But, Mike Evans can run by people. Mike Williams can run by people.
Yeah.
I don't think Drake London is that guy.
Greg, if you're a team like the Titans, the Bears, the Eagles, who need a ready-to-go guy where they've got that X receiver spot open or an outside position open, let's talk about Ohio State, Olave and Garrett Wilson. Compare and contrast. And also, who do you think is more ready to go of the two guys?
Well, I really like Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, the only issue with Wilson, and again, I can't speak to how people see him, but, the only potential issue with someone like Garrett Wilson is he's not very big. I mean, he came in at 183 pounds. He's 5'11 3/4. That's fine. I think Wilson really possesses higher level receiving traits. I think he's a 3-level dimension. He's got strong run after catch ability. He's really a fluid, easy mover. He's got natural quickness and suddenness to him. He's tough to match one-on-one. I thought there were times he really had a refined sense of how to run routes, use his vertical stem to get off coverage corners turned, and then he snapped off his breaks. He's got really good short area quickness. He can line up both outside and in the slot. He has extensive experience in both locations. So obviously that works. I saw him in many ways like a Stefan Diggs. Because Diggs is not a big man either. And Diggs clearly went to Minnesota. No one saw him early on as a quote unquote number one, Adam, whatever that means. But he was not seen early on as a number one. And then he put up some big numbers in tandem with Thielen for a couple of years there. And then obviously went to Buffalo. And now he's clearly a number one. And I think Wilson possesses some similarities to Diggs, and it would not surprise me if he became the number one target for a diverse passing team.
Route running on that, because you Diggs, depending on who you speak with, might be the NFL's best route runner. I know you've seen him 1,000 times.
Yep.
How's Wilson as a route runner?
I think he's good. I think there's a little. Look, most college receivers have some things to clean up. I think he has really natural quickness as a route runner. Like I said, he's got 3-level ability. I think he understands how to run routes. So, I really like Garrett Wilson a lot. I mean, he's, I'm not good at making lists here, but to me, I could see Garrett Wilson being the top receiver off the board.
And Olave, how would you compare with his teammate?
Olave's a compliment. He's not a number one. Olave is a long, smooth, fluid wideout. Who can run. There's no physical dimension to Olave's game whatsoever. So you have to be careful. Olave is one of those guys that if you draft him and you think he's the guy, he's not the guy because there's certain things he can't do. He's not going to work between the numbers. He doesn't like to be around bodies. And I'm just telling you what the tape shows. He's a guy that he does not have much run after catch ability. Will he catch the ball through contact and make tough contested catches in the middle of the field? To me, that's a question. But he's clearly smooth and fluid. I think I wouldn't call him one speed, but he's very smooth and can run. I don't know if he's got that secondary gear. I think he can run, but I don't know if there's that extra element to his game. I think he does run good routes. I think he's best working with free access off the ball so he can build up that speed because he's long. He's thin and linear, but he's long. I think he has a good feel for the pace and tempo of routes. I think he's a space receiver. You want him outside the numbers. So to me, he's a compliment. I don't think you draft him with the idea that he's the guy. So that I think he's a smooth, fluid, complementary receiver in a well-schemed passing game that gets him in space.
Trying to think of a good comp like that. Maybe a Will Fuller. I don't know. Like not a high-volume receiver, but a guy who will take
more explosive.
Yeah.
I mean, the name I'm going to mention, and I just thought of it, Geoff. It's that you mentioned a comp, and this guy was a late-round pick and has been with a number of teams, had some good years. To me, he's kind of like Kenny Stills.
Could run. Yeah,
that's that's interesting.
Decent size.
Yeah. Okay. Getting back to the X, we
didn't talk about Traylon Burks.
Yeah, we didn't try. That's what I was going to ask you. The Eagles had their wide receivers coach Aaron Moorhead lead the pro day workout for Traylon Burks.
Do you know what Burks' 40 time was at his pro day? Because it wasn't good at the combine.
Did he run it at the 40?
Yeah, it was better. I think it might have been the mid 4.4s. I know it was much better.
Yeah.
I know that.
He plays fast. He played. Okay. I mean, look, I watched his tape. He ran away from the Alabama defense. But to me, he's a high-level prospect. I think he's got the outstanding size speed profile. He can mismatch corners. He can line up anywhere. There's a Deebo Samuel, Cordero Patterson element to the way he can be deployed if you so want him to be deployed that way. As I said, he has excellent play speed, which is only enhanced by his size and stride length, and he's got big mitts. He catches the football. And he's got really good run after catch traits, which is why you have the Deebo Samuel, Cordero Patterson element to his game. I think some also could see him like an A.J. Brown, big, physical, can work the middle of the field, catches the ball. There's a physical presence to his overall game, both in terms of his route running and run after catch. I really like Treylon Burks.
4.55, by the way, is what the internet tells me that he ran at his pro day,
which was exactly the same that he ran at the combine.
You know what, though? I will tell you that
could be, yeah.
That pro day, you have to talk to 3 or 4 people because they may have different times. That happens in pro days.
Sure.
But as Greg said, he runs way faster on tape, and that's
he runs way fast. He had a 75-yard touchdown against Alabama, and it was a shorter throw and a long run, and he ran away from that defense.
Talking people in scouting speak very highly of his tape, so I'm glad that you.
Well, again, I like to think that well, not I like to think. Obviously, you guys know I know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that because his tape is very good, and it's 2 years of really quality tape in the best conference in the country. And again, it's still college football, but it is the best conference in the country, playing against a lot of guys who do go on to play in the National Football League. So, I think you have to sort of push aside, even if it is a 4.55, he plays faster than that. And, let's keep a couple of things in mind. DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.57. Michael Thomas ran a 4.58. The 40 time, you have to be careful about using that as your foundational basis for judging wide receivers.
Right.
And also guys run super fast when they don't play to that time speed, right?
Which is exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Because wide receiver in the NFL is not about straight line speed.
Let me correct myself, by the way. That was his NFL scouting combine time, 4.55. He did not run the 40 at his pro day, but according to what I just read. So
and I'm sure he was disappointed, particularly since I think 15 wide receivers ran under 4.4.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately irrelevant when you watch his tape. And I'm glad Adam said that about other people he's spoken to as well, because I would absolutely echo that based on tape study.
Burks, he might either worked out for teams privately. He has to run before. There's something off to get some more information on the.
I would bet he would like to run again, so maybe he did in a private workout. But it's irrelevant. It's ultimately irrelevant.
Sure. There's a guy it's funny, Greg. You and I talked before I went to Senior Bowl, and you said, "Hey, keep an eye on Velus Jones of Tennessee. I really like the tape." Well, wouldn't you know it? That's what I did when I went there, and he showed up the first day I was there. So. Give everybody an idea of who Velus Jones looks like to you as a receiver, what he could be at the next level.
Yeah, and he's I believe he's a California kid. He spent his first seasons at USC before transferring to Tennessee for his final 2 seasons. So he's a very interesting guy. He's a little bigger than you might think. I mean, he's 5'11", 203. I think that's what he is. Maybe I watched him before the combine. I got to confirm that, which I can do, probably while we're talking. But that's irrelevant. He's going to be in that range.
Yeah.
Now, I think he's another guy that's a space receiver, needing room to catch the ball and then use his outstanding run after catch traits. And that's the reason Tennessee featured him in the tunnel screen game, the quick game out of the slot. He's got really good short area quickness and separation quickness to develop into an efficient route runner. I think he needs to learn more of the subtleties and nuances demanded of slot receivers if he's going to play there. I think he's another guy that you could use as a motion movement receiver because you want to get him free access. I think he can be a jet sweep receiver because he's a punt returner too, and a really good one. Now, in Tennessee's offense this past year, 54 of his 87 targets came from the slot. So he was, higher percentage in the slot. The more I watched his tape, the more I liked his game. The NFL now is very much, there's a lot more quick game. There's a lot more motion movement receivers. There's a lot more jet sweeps. I think he kind of fits that mold. And he wasn't really used much as a vertical receiver in Tennessee's offense. I think he can become somewhat of a vertical receiver in the NFL. And we'll see, who drafts him, obviously. But I'm actually going to just try to find right now Velus Jones. Let me see if I can find his numbers right here. Let's see.
Tennessee is where Josh Palmer went last year.
Just so you know, he ran a 4. His official 40 time was 4.31. So again, we just said that doesn't automatically mean he's a vertical receiver, but I would say that's pretty fast. And he did have a 10-yard split, which is really good, 1.5. So, I think there's a vertical element that can be cultivated with his game. I don't think he's just a slot receiver. Plus, he was 5'11 and 3/4 and 204. So his size would suggest he could line up anywhere.
All right, so we're having a good discussion here about 40 time, when it's relevant, when it's not as relevant because compared to the tape. So it's a good time to bring up our next wide receiver, who I guess didn't run a good 40 now because 4.4 is not considered fast any longer. But that's what Jahan Dotson ran at the combine, and people, I guess, use the term underwhelming to describe it. But when you watched him, Greg, Jahan Dotson, how do you feel about him?
I really liked his tape a lot. I watched him last summer from 2020, and I watched him, this year from 2021. I really like him. I think he's got explosive traits, an ability to be a factor at all three levels. He's got location versatility. You can line him up anywhere in your formation. I thought he was more explosive vertically in 2021, so that was good to see, with more accelerating speed to get on top of the defense. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what was really impressive, given his 184-pound frame, he was fearless working in the middle of the field. And that clearly reflects a mental toughness and competitiveness that cannot be taught. Mm-hmm. And the more I watched him, the more I liked his tape. I think he can be a multi-dimensional receiver in the NFL. His measurables are exactly the same as Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh, but Dotson ran a much better 40 time, again, whatever that means, but he ran a much better 40 time than Deontay Johnson. And obviously Dotson catches the ball much better than Johnson, who's had significant struggles holding on to the football. I think Dotson is, again, without getting into where guys go, to me, he's a top 40 pick. I think Jahan Dotson it really, will project and transition well to the NFL.
Do you? It sounds like you like him as much as a Garrett Wilson, or you feel like maybe they're comparable in what they bring to an offense?
It's interesting because I think they're close, and I don't think Dotson's being talked about that way. Mm-hmm. I think I like Wilson a little more, but I think Dotson is a guy to keep an eye on. I mean, not in the draft. Who knows where he goes? But that fearlessness and toughness in the middle of the field. Don't forget, Wilson was only 183. Dotson's 184. They're not big guys in terms of weight. But I really like Jahan Dotson a lot.
Yeah, he also didn't play with the most accurate of quarterbacks the last year or two. So
I think you're being kind.
I think I am being kind.
Especially since you're a Penn State guy, so you're allowed to say that.
Yeah. I think that's helped him work on his catch radius. And
it's interesting, Greg, when you look at this draft class, there's a guy that I really like who didn't have a ton of production, but he's got everything that you look for. That's Christian Watson from North Dakota State, had a very good Senior Bowl week. Really nice kid. We had a chance to talk to him at the Combine on NFL radio, and he's got the measurables. His 40 time surprisingly was really, really good. Greg, what does his tape look like to you?
I don't think it was surprisingly good. I think that's what the tape showed. He ran by people in his level of football like they were ninth graders. Wow. I think he'll be seen. Here's what I said. And I think this is very fair because I think he's got a lot of work to do. But I'll tell you, here's what I said. I said, he'll be seen as a fascinating prospect given his high-level size, speed profile, and that will get people very excited in the pre-draft process. But he's not really that good a receiver. He looks like a track athlete. He's got easy burst and acceleration, long fluid strides. He easily and effortlessly got on top of FCF corners. I mean, he just ran by these guys like they weren't there. Now, rarely do you see that in the NFL. So we have to put that aside. Doesn't mean he's not fast. He is fast. But, in the NFL, you don't just run by people like they're not there. He's a vertical dimension right now. Look, that's always in demand in the NFL. His height, weight, and 40-yard dash were exact replicas of Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and that's exactly who I thought of when I watched his tape. I thought he's the same guy.
And Marquez is kind of a shot player right now in the NFL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Watson is really not that good a receiver. And in fact, I've learned so much about receivers, over these last 10 years being at the Combine, talking to receivers coaches, who, by the way, you talk to good receivers coaches and they'll tell you can teach guys how to catch the football. Watson does not know how to catch certain balls. Like when he ran in-breaking routes, like dig balls, and the ball was out in front of him where you've got to catch it with your hands, he did not know how to position his hands to properly catch that kind of throw. So he has a lot to learn. But like I said, he's going to get people all worked up in the pre-draft process. And we're in the pre-draft process because he's 6'4" and 1/8", 208. He can run. His 40-yard dash was phenomenal. His 10-yard split was phenomenal. So this kid, plus his vertical jump, all that good stuff, the pre-draft stuff that gets people excited. That's what he is. You know, I wonder if teams will see him as a multi-dimensional weapon similar to the Cordero Patterson, to a lesser extent, Deebo Samuel. I think he can probably be developed that way, but he's got some work to do. He's not ready to be a big-time player week one unless he's on a team, you know, like if he were to go to the Chiefs, okay? You know, Andy Reid will use him in a way where he'll make explosive plays, but he's not going to catch 60 balls.
Greg, I want to ask you about Jamison Williams. I mean, I know he had the injury, but there are some people who believe he'll still be a first-round pick. What did you see in his tape, and how does he kind of compare to the breed of Alabama receiver that has come into the NFL lately?
Yeah, Jamison Williams can flat out freaking run now. I mean, there are not many receivers with this flat-out vertical speed and big playability, and that makes him an impact receiver and a game changer. And what are teams looking for? Game changers. I mean, this guy is smooth. He's fluid. He can get on top of corners and hit the home run. He's got route quickness and separation quickness. You know, to use the term that we like to use, he's twitchy and sudden. He's a naturally explosive guy. You could potentially argue, look, we know Watson ran by FCS corners, but you could argue that Williams could well be the most explosive vertical receiver in the draft. With that accelerating deep speed is big time. I mean, and he's got a very easy ability to track the deep ball. So I think, to me, he's a fascinating prospect. He's long, he's lean. I thought because they coach receivers really, really well at Alabama, I thought that he showed some detail and nuance to his route running as well. He snapped off routes with separation. He lined up both outside and in the slot. You know, again, you get caught up in, is he a true number one or is he more of the explosive complement? If you see him as the explosive complement, he's a far better prospect than Chris Olave.
Greg, when you say number one receiver, because everybody has
I don't know what that means. The way, you know,
right, that's what I was asking.
You know,
how do you see that?
Is Cooper Kupp a number one receiver? His numbers suggest he is, clearly, and his target share suggests he is, but he's not a number one receiver in the same way that Julio Jones in his prime was a number one receiver. You know, so you get into these designations, you know, I'm not sure what they mean, and I'm not trying to be cute or funny or sarcastic.
Yeah, I was just curious how you saw it. Yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, I'm not, you know, with the expansion of pass games now, look, Jamar Chase, okay, he's a number one receiver. I think, you know, you clearly could say that. I don't think there's a Jamar Chase in this draft class. You know, so unless you're talking about, as we started this conversation, Geoff, with transcendent type receivers, and unless you're talking about that guy, then I'm not sure that there is a number one in a strict sense. It comes down to deployment by specific teams and their schemes.
Right. All right, let me go a little rapid fire with you, Greg. I'll give you a couple of names now, and you tell me, you know, real quick. We don't have to do 5 minutes on each, but maybe you like one more than the other. George Pickens from Georgia, Skye Moore from Western Michigan, and Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama. Any one of those kind of stick out to you?
Well, I am gonna spend a few minutes talking about George Pickens because I think George Pickens is a far better prospect than Drake London. And I really like George Pickens, 6'2 3/4", 200 pounds. To me, he's everything you want as an outside receiver. He played boundary X at Georgia. I went back and looked at his 2019 tape. Don't forget, he got to Georgia in 2019. SEC led them in receiving his first year, okay? Watched all his pass targets in 2019 and 2020. I don't know George Pickens, but I think it says an awful lot about George Pickens that he came back and played this year knowing he was coming out. He did not have to do that, and no one would have blinked an eye, okay? He is I think he's got every trait you look for as a big boundary X receiver. He's explosive off the ball into his route stem. He eats space in a hurry. He's got stride length and build-up speed. He ran by SEC corners. He's got ball skills. To me, if George Pickens played a full season this season, we'd be talking about him as a top 10 receiver in this draft.
Wow. Interesting there. Okay. And the other guys I mentioned were Jalen Tolbert and Skye Moore.
Yeah, Jalen Tolbert I watched last summer, and actually as soon as I was done watching him, because he went to South Alabama, which is in Mobile, which I know Jim Nagy's based in Mobile, I immediately texted Jim and said, this guy's going to play in the NFL. And that was last summer when I watched his 2020 targets. He's a long, naturally fluid receiver. He's a finesse receiver more than, a big physical receiver. I think he has a size, length, 3-level profile. I think he's another guy you'd like to get him free access off the ball, which maybe doesn't make him an X. So I think he's got the look and movement of an NFL wideout. If we want to be quicker with him, he's going to play in the league. He'll probably be a day 2 pick. I think he's just one of those guys that looks like an NFL receiver. Skye, did you mention Skye Moore?
Yes.
Yeah. Skye Moore was a little bit of a tough evaluation for me because I think I kept going back and forth in my mind as to what he really is. I think that I'm not sure he's sudden and explosive. I'm not sure. Obviously he put up huge numbers. He played a lot outside at Western Michigan. He's 5'9" and 5'8", 195 pounds. I don't think he plays to his time speed of 4.41. His 10-yard split was great. I think that he's got location versatility within your offense. He's got a strong, compact frame. I didn't think, and I think others disagree. So I'll leave it at that. But I didn't think he was sudden or purely explosive. I didn't think he snapped out of breaks with the kind of burst you'd like to see. I don't think he's a speed receiver. Can he uncover and separate versus quality NFL man coverage? I think that's a little bit of a question. He was so limited in what he was asked to do in college, and that it does not automatically mean that's a negative, but he ran just a ton of slant routes and glance routes off their RPO game and their quick game stuff. I'm just not sure exactly what he is.
Okay.
Greg, it sounds like as you wrap this up here, we've gone over a lot of receivers and just hearing you talk about it, sounds like it's a fairly deep group, but
it's a really deep group. We could do this again next week, Geoff, and talk
about it. Right. But overall, is there that plug and play? And obviously, it depends who coaches them, depends where they go. But just in general, do you think there's a couple plug and play guys? Yep. You know what? If he's in the right spot, this guy should play week 1.
Yeah. I think Garrett Wilson will play week 1.
Yep.
I tell you who I think could play week 1, and I don't know what his ACL status is John Mechie. John Mechie, to me, is very much like Robert Woods. I think John Mechie is just a really good route runner. You wouldn't call him explosive, but he can get on top of corners. So, again, I don't know what his ACL status is. It's not likely he'll play week 1 because of that. But I think John Mechie is just a really good, refined, polished receiver. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Cooper Kupp because I'm always loath to make comparisons to guys who are great, particularly Cooper Kupp coming off arguably the best overall season by a wide receiver in terms of numbers and production. But I think John Mechie could be plugged in right now if he was healthy and line up and play in the NFL, particularly in the slot. And I think Cooper Kupp was another guy I happened to get right, Adam, as you recall. I said that he could, roll out of bed and line up in the slot. And, when he came out of college, and obviously he did that. Mechie struck me as the same kind of guy, but he's got the ACL that he's coming back from.
Can I just one thing on slot receivers? And you mentioned Kupp, who also had a dominant Senior Bowl week.
But it's funny. He ran a 4.62 at the combine.
I was just going to say that. But what I know this is a long time ago, but you just brought up that you remember how high you were on him. A guy that did not run well at the combine, right? What do you remember about his tape coming back from, was it Eastern Washington?
He came from Eastern Washington, yeah.
What was his tape like? Do you remember?
His tape was really good. He played on the outside. He played all over.
Oh.
I thought his tape was really good. I mean, the question with him, and it comes down to relative importance in evaluator's mind, is he going to be able to, theoretically run by and separate from people at the NFL, because he played at Eastern Washington. I thought he would. I didn't think he'd run by people, but I thought he would separate. And he's not really, you wouldn't call him a true vertical receiver. He certainly can get on top of corners at times, because he's so savvy running routes to respond to our buddy Jason Avant. He knows how to move corners off their spot. He's a master at that, but I thought that he would do that in the NFL, just like I think John Mechie will do that in the NFL.
Greg, I have one last guy before we get out of here, because I have to ask you, we just had him on our platform Tuesday morning, our show with Andrew DeCecco, Draft Dreams. He had an interview with SMU's Danny Gray,
who I didn't see. I'm sorry.
Oh, you did not? Oh,
I did not see Danny Gray. I've not seen him yet. There's I can't believe you asked me, but I've probably seen 25 receivers, and I just haven't seen him.
I should have just cut the show after Adam's question.
That's all right. That's all right.
But,
hey,
all right. Maybe we'll ask you next week.
Well, for people who know me, whether they like what I say or not, the one thing they probably know is I don't talk about things I don't know about.
Correct.
He ran well at the combine, though. Oh boy,
he did run well, and he said he didn't think he ran well. He expected to run better, which shows you.
I don't know.
4.33. Jeez.
I mean, there's one other guy I'm just quickly going to mention who I thought was fascinating, Colleek Shakir out of Boise State.
Okay.
I thought he was a really, really interesting guy. I mean, 70% of his receptions this year came out of the slot, so he'll probably be seen that way. And his game's fun to watch. He's got versatility. He's a refined and detailed route runner. He's got great separation quickness, outstanding body control and hands. Made a ton of really tough catches, really good run after catch. And for a guy who's just under 6 feet and 196, he had really high level competitiveness. I really liked his tape. I think there's a guy to me, he could well be a contributor from day one in 11 personnel groupings. My guess is you could line him up as your slot guy in 11 personnel from day one, and he'll function just fine.
Awesome. Great stuff, Greg. That was a lot of wide receivers we covered. And if you want to give us a few more next one, we can certainly add.
There's a lot more to talk about. Unfortunately, I didn't see Danny Gray. Sorry, guys.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Next week, we will do a new position group and have it all broken down for you.
Kickers.
Great stuff as always. Thank you, Greg Cosell. For Adam Caplan and Greg Cosell, I'm Geoff Mosher, and you've been watching The Intel with Greg Cosell.